Water is one of the building blocks of life and also one of the pillars for a successful life. On a given day, we use water for hydration and sanitation to ensure our survival, as well as food production. But outside of those processes tied for our own biological success, we use it for purposes such as ornamentation, watering our flowers, taking care of our pets, and also recreation. Now, the average American household uses about 2,100 gallons a week, which comes to about 300 gallons a day. I bring this statistic up because I'm going to show you a disparity. In the Navajo Nation, of which the Living Water Christian Outreach Church went on a mission to this year from June 13th to the 20th, the average household there gets 2 500-gallon allotments of water a week. And as the slide here will show, it's relatively quote-unquote cheap, where each 500-gallon installment is only $3. But the problem is you are restricted to those 2 allotments, and you also have to have a large vehicle capable of transferring said water. Now, our church, when we went on a mission to the Navajo Nation, went so in the name of helping spread the living water, that is our faith, but also water itself in terms of water production. In the desert, water is even more essential for survival than in our humid climate here. And I want to show you how this all came together, from water production to our mission. And it involves a very special preacher named Catherine Pierce. Pastor Catherine Pierce is the head of the Tisto Crossroad Assembly of God. Running a church is a full-time job and then some, but she operates in an environment that is just as polarized, if not more than our own, in that on the reservation system as a whole, there is a power balance between Christianity and traditionalism, the Native American religious systems. Now, in the Hopi reservation, for example, churches are being systematically shut down because of the power balance being upset by traditionalism and the government officials and the resultant culture. So in addition to operating her church, and that, Pastor Catherine takes care of her congregation. She does grocery runs and distributes supplies to those in need as a form of ministry, and also does the water truck ministry, where she loads up the Water Buffalo 500-gallon tank attachment to her truck and delivers water to members of her congregation who cannot pick up their allotment. Now, this is an astonishing multiple ministry that is happening atop of trying to operate in a climate that is very charged. And so I want to pass the microphone to her for a moment to talk about what the needs are, just so you can hear directly from the preacher who has been doing an incredible job on her own in the reservation.
So there's got to be has to be a call on your life. Like I said, we need workers, we need laborers, we need pastors, we need teachers, we need people that will just, can just go out and witness to people, go into the neighborhood, or what neighborhood we have, and that's another thing that makes it difficult. Hopi reservation, Navajo reservation, the houses are so far between. When we were doing groceries and stuff during COVID and trying to hit every house to get stuff to them, whether it was wood or water or blankets or food, and when we would go there, you drive a mile and you drop something off, and you drive 2 more miles and you drop something off. And, I mean, it's a process. And it's dirt roads, it's hard, it's not easy, but everything that you do it as unto the Lord. It's not about you. You can't do it without Him. And so, when people like you come out, it makes it easier. Just like you guys took a big burden off of us.
Now, God answers our prayers in unexpected and perfectly timed ways. Pastor Catherine's prayers for workers for the harvest were fulfilled last year when we had a presentation at church, which we'll talk about in the next chapter.
Hello, my name is Justin Robinson. I'm the youth pastor here at Living Water Christian Outreach, and we just got back about a week ago from our missions trip to Arizona. And the question's been asked, why Arizona? Why the Navajo Nation? And it kind of goes back to it was birthed through the youth. We were at winter retreat in January of 2022, and they always put out a Speed the Light project and a challenge to the youth each year to raise money for missions project and missions work that needs completed, and how the youth can have some kind of ownership in that through not only their giving, but in their prayer support. So during that conference, we were there. The youth were challenged to give, and they played a video. In the video, it was talking about the money that we often send to Africa and the wells that need to be drilled there for those people to have basic needs met, the need of water in their life. But we come to find out that right here in our very own country, we have our own people, the Native Americans, living without water. The basic dignity that many of us take for granted on a daily basis, they didn't have. So they put this challenge out to the youth to help raise money and send support to the Navajo Nation to get them the wells that needed repaired, get additional wells drilled. And kind of out of that, we came back and we shared that during our youth Sunday at the end of March. And from that, it kind of just snowballed out of there. There was a move among God's people that just said, we're taking for granted a basic need being met that we have in our very own country, the same need not being accessible to many people. So from that, myself, Pastor Dusty, Joel, kind of got together with some other individuals and started praying about it and digging into it a little deeper to see, how could we go beyond just giving our money, giving our prayers, but how could we get feet on the ground? And through that, we kind of did some research and started reaching out, looking for other Assembly of God churches within the Navajo Nation. And we ended up coming across Pastor Catherine Pierce's church in Tisto, the Crossroads Assembly of God. And we made that initial contact with her, which I'm sure was just as a surprise to her as it was for us. And the goal initially was, do we need to drill a well? But in talking with her and having conversations through time, we found out that the church there does have a well on the property. However, it's currently not functional. It hasn't been functional since she had taken over as the pastor at Tisto. So in talking with her, there was some work there that needed to be done. We kind of had the idea of getting together with the people from our church to go out and how other ministry opportunities could be there. And basically it was dependent upon who was coming from our church as to how we could meet the needs or be a benefit to them in some way, a blessing in some capacity. So based on the people that we took, we decided to start a children's ministry. And talking with her, that was a need within their church. They had a children's ministry going on prior to COVID, but just like COVID, it shut everything down. And they really weren't rebounding. The children's program was almost non-existent after COVID. So trying to go out and help revitalize that to get a children's program up and running again, and also taking a look at the well that they have to see if there's a way we could revitalize it, or if not, do we need to build or drill a new well?
We found out that the needs were even greater than what we thought. And so one woman in her church didn't have electricity, and she was 80 years old, and it was just in the last year that she had gotten electricity and turned a light on for the first time. And she started to describe what her day-to-day tasks were, and that really started to stir up an emotional response from myself, because as a pastor, I can't imagine adding on water delivery, going out and to some of the places that she goes to, and she started describing how far away that they were. There's a great demand that was upon her. There was a great demand upon the ministry there, but for her to be able to, she goes and delivers water 3 times a week. She goes and if somebody needs something, she is there in a moment's notice, and it's not like it's right down the street. Everywhere they go there is extremely far away. And so this is a full hands-on, full involvement ministry. But it all started with that video from Pendel, Speed the Light, talking about the condition of the Navajo people having absolutely no water. And we take them sorts of things for granted here. Most people let the water run while they brush their teeth.
A year after that presentation, we arrived on the Navajo Nation. We were able to host a vacation Bible school, which was a resounding success, conduct some ministry on site and off site, and we were able to tag along with Pastor Catherine on her water truck runs and get an intimate glimpse into the amazing work that she does on the reservation. Now, I will expand on some of these other details in other sections, but I just wanted to give a quick overview of this before we went into the fine details and implications.
When I called Pastor Catherine, I began to ask questions about her water condition and really the people where she was on the reservation. What was the water condition? And that's when she began to tell me that she drives a water truck 3 days a week and delivers 500 and some gallon allotments to different ones who cannot come out and get the water themselves, but because they have no vehicle or they're elderly. And so we began to talk, and I asked her if she had water easily accessible. And she said, we go in to Dilcon, which is about 10 to 15 miles away, and she fills up water there and then goes and distributes the water where it's needed. But she said, I have a well on my property. And she said, it was capped off when I got here, and I've never understood why. And so that kind of stirred also some thoughts. What could we do to make that well operational? And so I started investigating with Pastor Catherine. What was the reasoning that they capped it off? Was it dry? Was it no good water? Did it need a filtration system on it? And she had no answers because that was done before she ever got there. And so when they earlier in her ministry, when she first got there, they attempted to cut the cap off, and something fell down inside the well. And she said, but there's water there, because they heard it splashing. And so she knew that there was water there. And one of the observations that she said was there's trees all around where the well is and where she is, and not little trees, pretty big sized trees. And when you're in the Arizona desert, trees aren't hardly seen anywhere. So that led us to believe that there is a good well with a good source of water there. And so when we got there, we began to investigate kind of what was going on with the well, and it looked as if when they cut the cap off, the pipe from an old hand pump fell down in to the well, and it got lodged in there sideways. And so when we were there, there was a gentleman who came, and he brought a jack and a winch and different things. We was going to try to dislodge this pipe, and we worked on it for maybe an hour or so, maybe 2 hours. And he had a cable, and every time we'd start cranking on the cable, the pipe would just kept getting jammed into the side of the well casing. Every time we attempted to lift it, it just dug deeper and deeper into the side.
Even though we were not able to fully dislodge all of the debris inside the well, we left with the contentment knowing that the first of many important dominoes had been toppled. We left knowing that 2 weeks after our visit, the gentleman, Calvin, who had come out to help us, would return with heavier equipment that would facilitate the removal of all of the debris inside the well. This would in turn pave the way for the well drilling company to come in, test the water, and determine what the next best cause is. Whether it was installing a treatment apparatus on the church, or just repairing the mechanism itself for the water extraction. And for us, we would be able to help with those, and down the road look at a long-term option for water collection, and also the ministry, as Pastor Dusty will later talk about, through the use of storage tanks. And so this chapter of our mission on the reservation was left incomplete, but we left on a good note with the promise of more implementation and success to be found down the road. And so it's good when you're doing work like this to focus on the task in front of you, but to not beholden yourself to a deadline or a finished outcome within a relatively short amount of time, because at the end of the day, you have to give the Lord room to work, and God's timing is impeccable.
some of the most genuine and authentic people I have ever met are on that reservation. Spiritually, I've never met a more warm and loving people in my entire life. Everywhere that we went, we were accepted. Everywhere that we went, we were cared for, we were loved, and we were treated like family. Um, they were so open to ministry in the church. You know, whenever we would come, they just love God, and they love anybody who shows an interest to them. When they worship God, they worship him with all of their heart, all of their mind, all of their soul, all of their being, all of their strength. It's pure, it's genuine, it's authentic. And the few services that we were in, you could just feel the presence of God in those places so strong. And I believe perhaps I felt the presence of God there stronger than I did in most other places of worship that I've ever been in.
The memorable experiences we had, people, if you feed them, they will come. Well, we were well fed while we were there. And through those opportunities, we were able to minister with people. We were able to pray for individuals. We were able to share Jesus with them. We had actually children bringing their parents to church. One of the things is the one night at our kids crusade, we had two little kids come, and they were there with us, and they had their grandmother bring them to church. And they were kind of slow to warm up at first, as everyone else was engaged and singing and dancing, and they kind of came in on the first song and just sat in the pew. And I wanted to kind of share with them a little bit and just play with them. Kids like to engage and get interacted with. So that kind of got them to open up and start participating. And then when we were doing our craft, they were sharing with Patty and I that their mom was bleeding, and that her eye was bleeding and her knee was bleeding. We were able to pray with the kids for their mother, and it ended up then that following Sunday, they came to church, and their mom came with them. That they'd been trying to get her to come to church. Her and mother was trying to get her, the grandmother, the children, was trying to get her daughter to come to church, but she didn't come, hadn't been coming. She didn't come on Mother's Day. She didn't come on any other special events that they'd had. But because of the interaction with the children that we had, the mother made the choice to come to church that day. And she came to the front, and she was able to open up and ask for prayer for the alcohol addiction she had. And that was just one of many stories, but it's let the little children come to me. And it was through those little children and that she was able to come to church. And that desire and that passion, we often try and dismiss our kids. We try and maybe quiet them down, or we fear that they're going to be too loud within the service, but you don't know the impact. We're called to come with that childlike faith. And it's through that childlike faith that a mother came in and was able to receive prayer for the addiction she's been battling.
What stood out to me was the depth of the welcome that we received during our time on the reservation. The two examples I'm going to use happened within a few hours of each other on Father's Day Sunday. Following the conclusion of the service, we were invited to a community meal that was hosted at the church, where the congregation made us Navajo tacos and assorted sides. We were treated like family in the midst of it, and you could just feel the love permeating through, whether it was in the food, the fellowship, and just the atmosphere itself. Following that luncheon, we were invited to a Father's Day dinner from one of the congregation members at one of their relatives' homes in the Hopi reservation. And that atmosphere transferred over there, where we felt the same kind of welcome and fellowship that God wants. After we finished eating the food, we were given tours of the homes of several of the family members, and also immediate access to some of the important sites on the Hopi reservation. And all the while, I kept thinking, as we walked through these beautiful sites, was that this kind of welcome and access to relative strangers would not happen back home in the heart of Appalachia. So all I can emphasize is just how we were blessed in so many ways and so deeply. If a believer is doing it correctly, God dictates all of their steps. Our hearts burn to return to the Navajo Nation and do more work for God, but we do not know the timing of it. It could be next year or the year after. And the work that we would do when we return is as uncertain as the date we return. Would we bring a team of laborers down to help achieve some of the tasks needed for Pastor Catherine's operation that could help ensure her success? Or would we take a team to help do door-to-door ministry and use some of the ins we have with the elders who have aligned with the church? God alone has the answers to these, but I want to talk about one of our more immediate endeavors, integral to our future work on the reservation, the well.
One of the hopes that we're going to have with getting her a well operational at her church is there's lots of traditional Native Americans who live on the reservation who are not necessarily open to Christianity. It's hard to minister to these people. They're just kind of unsure, maybe always brought up with the traditional beliefs. So that's kind of the battle on the reservation, and but they still have basic needs. And so one of the things that we're hoping to do when we get this well operational, and depending on the depth of the well, we may have to invest in eventually storage tanks, so that way she has some way for the water to be pumped up. But we want to give her a resource that she can open up to maybe the people who don't come to church, to people who normally would never step foot in a church, whether they're traditional or they're just not interested in religion at all, or even other people, to give her a ministry tool right there where she is, that they can come to the church and get water, and she is able to minister to them, able to witness to them, and potentially lead them to Christ. And so because water is such a great need there, we feel that providing this opportunity for her would just be a wide open door for her to be able to minister to people that she normally wouldn't have the opportunity to minister to. Right now, there are some that she's permitted to go and minister to, pray to, bring needs if they have food needs or whatever. She does help out that way. But we're looking at this could open the door much wider for her and cast her nets much farther if she can say, hey, we got some water, come to the church, and while you're filling up, that's a great opportunity for her to share Christ with these people who normally wouldn't have the opportunity or the openness to receiving Christ.
One of the things that I noticed out here is how hungry they are for God, or hungry for what they've not experienced, maybe, I don't know. So the spiritual end of it, do you see there a great need to be filled still? I mean, there's a lot of communities that don't have.
Oh, yeah.
And what would be the best way that others could help you accomplish that?
Well, when I came out, my vision was what the Lord dealt with me about was winning Tisto for the Lord. And since I've been in Tisto and ministering to people, that's sort of grown to this area, not just Tisto, but Delcon and Cedar Springs and Sabadell High and all the different areas around here. And there's just not enough. In the scripture where it says that the fields are white with harvest,
yeah,
but the workers are few.
Yeah.
That's the way it is here. The
Laborers.
fields are white with harvest, but the workers are few.
Yeah.
And so I'm praying all the time. We need laborers. We need people that will come. We need people that will go out and witness. Most of the time, you experienced it.
Yep.
You witness to somebody and you ask them if they want to receive the Lord, and most of the time, they're ready.
It was easy.
But if there's nobody to ask them,
Right.
how are they going to come?
That's right. That's right. Your day-to-day operations include, and what we got to partner with you doing this, is taking water and delivering water. And one of the things that we're trying to accomplish is create a place here, get your well operational, so that people can come here and receive ministry and water. Could you just describe what that process looks like? Because I know we've been doing it, but how often do you deliver water, and kind of that's a ministry that you have. So if you could just kind of describe that a little.
Usually between every week and 10 days. Um, so I try to stagger it so I don't have to do it all, all at once. And so usually about 7 days, I'll go back to some, and then about 10 days I'll go back to the others, and I can keep them kind of filled up. If they need it in between, they call me and they tell me, and I'll take it to them. But we hook the water buffalo up to my truck, and we take it over to Dilcon. We have NTUA has a water station over there. And it's just a whole lot easier than going to one of the wells and you have to hand pump it.
Right.
So the water station is there. There's times when, because the water table, it's closed, and when it's closed, I have to go to Winslow. And if I go to Winslow, then I have to drive down there and fill the buffalo up and bring it back up here. It holds 500 gallons, and that will fill most of the people's tanks. But occasionally somebody will have like a tank that's a little bit bigger than that, and then those times I have to make 2 runs. And we did that the other day.
Yeah.
I went out to the Atticais and we took a load 500 gallons up, and it didn't fill them up, so we went back, got some more, and filled them up. The people are used to not having water, not having running water, and so they're very frugal with it.
Right.
So especially like if they'll say, we're getting low on water, but we can last, 2 or 3 more days, or we can last till Monday, or whatever they tell me. And so I'll tell them okay, and somehow they stretch it. But they're used to not using a whole lot of water. And so, but a lot of them don't have vehicles, so they can't go get water. A lot of them don't have water tanks, so they don't have any way to haul it. Before we got the water buffalo, we were doing it in 55-gallon barrels.
Wow.
And so we'd put those 55-gallon barrels in the back of my truck, and we'd take it to the well, and we would hand pump those barrels full. And when we'd get them full, we'd take them back to the houses. And I had, at that time, my son was helping me. Brother Lawrence helped me. Different ones would go and help me. But those barrels were 400 pounds when you filled them with water. And so trying to get them off my truck was another thing. Some of the people built platforms, or they had a porch, and I could back up to it, and we just kind of slid it off my tailgate, and usually there was just only maybe 6 inches or so difference, and we could walk it down. Mm-hmm. Some of them that they had to go to the ground, though, that was tough. And so the water buffalo was a blessing for us.
Yeah.
And it makes me be able to carry 500 gallons. If they've got those 55-gallon drums, I can do 10 of them, yeah, or 9 and so much. If they've got the what do they call it? The tanks.
Cisterns.
Yeah. If they've got those, then it usually takes the whole load. So it's just a matter of going back into the water station, taking it to them, going back, get it, and taking it to them, until I get everybody filled up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's we've talked before. Water and electricity are some basic needs that I think everybody else takes for granted.
Yeah.
But as you had described, and I found out firsthand, this is a third world country right in our country, because there's a lot of people with the basic needs, or basic things that we have at home that they don't have them out here. I remember you told us about, I can't remember her name, the lady who had got electricity for the first time. Ruth, after 80 years, she's 80 some years old, and they had an appliance shower for her.
They did. She got electric, but she didn't have anything electric.
Yeah.
So she's had fun learning to use all those things.
So do you see that being a hindrance to being able to share the gospel? Or do you think there'd be ways that we could help in those areas that would help you to be able to share the gospel?
Well, I told you there was one, actually there were friends of mine that came out for a vacation. It was 2 couples. And while they were here, they attended the service, so they rode with me on the van. And we took Ruth home. Okay. And the lady was just like, when Ruth got out of the van and she went up to her dark house in the dark, I mean, it's out on the res, it's dark.
Yeah.
There's no street lights, no yard lights, no.
Right.
And so Ruth got out and went in the house, and when she went in the house, the lady that was with me, she said, "Are we just gonna leave that little lady out here in the dark?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, "I'd sit here until when I see her kerosene lamp go on, she knows where it's at. She'll go to it. When she lights that lamp, I know she's okay because she's used to it." So when the lamp came on, we left, and she said, "I've thought and I've thought and I've thought about this. We just left that little lady out there, and it seemed like in the dark by herself." And she said that just touched her heart. So when she went back, she talked to her church, and they were trying to figure out what could they do. So they sent some solar lights out here. They had purchased and sent some solar lights. So we gave those out to people that didn't have electric in our church. And it was amazing what some of them did with it. I told you, Vita said she put the cord outside and the light inside, and she said, "When I open my door now," she said, "a light comes on in my house." and but yeah, we still have people without electric and without water running.
If we know better, we should do better. But they're sitting here with all these needs, and no one's addressing them. Nobody's coming to them. On the reservation, there are hardly any young people. There was a lot of kids and a lot of elderly people, but the middle-aged young adults population was very low. One of the greatest problems they're facing is drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and again, there's a great need for the gospel to go into the reservation, and I think, me personally, it needs to be refocused from the church in America. We need to be able to take care of everyone at home, just the same as we are everywhere. And God calls some people to Africa, and they need to go. God calls some people to Asia, they need to go. If God calls people to South America, they need to go. But we need to be understanding that there are people that God calls to right to this country, and we need to go, and we need to become the spiritual fulfillment for these people. We need to meet their basic needs spiritually and physically. And so I would just say the greatest takeaway is we need to not be ignorant to what's going on right here in our own country, and to really, really step it up, because we're missing a great opportunity right here within our country to minister to people and to lead people to Christ.
As Pastor Catherine and Pastor Dusty have both said, there's a lot of work to be done on the Navajo Nation, but at the moment there are too few workers to complete the work. If there is a goal for this documentary, it is to bring exposure to the plight of the Native Americans, but also encourage people to listen to God when He brings the purpose He has for them to do missions into the Navajo Nation and other reservations to their hearts. If you wish to pursue this, you can look at the following slides for some guidance on how to do it. But I want to thank you for taking your time to follow us on this journey and see how God was able to bring us across the country to fulfill His will. Thank you for your time.